Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webcast, How Are Trade Disruptions Reshaping Business Strategy and What Comes Next? I'm John Santoli, Senior Marketing Manager at Conduent, and I'll be your moderator today. We want to keep this webcast interactive, so please submit your questions anytime using the Q&A box, and we'll answer as many as possible at the end of today's session. Also, watch for poll questions that we will introduce during the webcast to help guide our discussion and also to provide you with another way to make sure your voice is part of our program. Now let's meet our expert panel. First off, we have Vic Thacker. Vic is the Director of Finance, Accounting, and Procurement Solutions at Conduent with 20 plus years experience in leading client transformation projects. He's also a recognized thought leader, having authored several widely read blogs, sharing his expertise on driving smarter AI-powered operations. Vic, great to have you. Can you give us a little more insight into your background?
Thanks, John, for having me. Looking forward to this. As you noted, 20 plus years experience in this, and I'm excited to be talking today about what our clients are talking to us about trade policy and artificial intelligence.
Excellent. We also have Vin Kumar. Vin is a principal at the Hackett Group, where he leads the AI and digital operations practice. He brings 20 plus years of working experience with Fortune 500s, and he also hosts the Hackett Group's Business Acceleration podcast. Vin, I'm excited to welcome you. Please share more about yourself with our audience.
Thank you, John, and thank you for having me on this panel. And Vic, always good to sit and chat with you and discuss these things we are so passionate about. Good afternoon and good day, folks. I lead part of the Hackett Group. I'm a principal and I lead our AI and digital advisory practice here, working with shared services leaders, global business services, global operations team, understanding the helping them adoption of AI, looking at digital edge technologies and how to adapt in the operations. And also have been the last probably 6 to 8 months working with clients, kind of helping them think through the disruptions in trade and services, new legislation coming through, and how this is going to impact all things shared services. So looking forward to this engaging conversation with all of you.
Great. Thank you, Vin. Appreciate that. All three of us are having a good hair day today, so I suggest we jump right in. So let's talk about really what's most of our audience is eager to hear from you today, Vin, and that's starting. We'll start with broad strokes. How do you see today's economic uncertainty influencing the way organizations manage their key operations?
Fundamentally, John and Vic, what we are seeing clients kind of being impacted is on 3 dimensions. One is the trade disruptions, from trade policy, geopolitical risk changing, impacting globally. To do that, that's one dimension. The second dimension is economic uncertainty that we are seeing. And the third dimension is all about kind of how do we adopt AI. This is kind of where we are seeing clients spending the time trying to address it, to do it. And along with that, there are some new legislations being passed through the U.S. Congress, both in the Senate and the House, where it's going to impact how we in corporate enterprises are leveraging global locations, getting our services from them, looking at offshoring, outsourcing. That's impacting too, along with some macroeconomic trends that our CEOs of enterprise are being focused and asked on, revenue per FTE, looking at that, looking at the cost of capital continuing to increase, and how that's going to play in all of the GCC development, pressures on, with the unemployment, white collar unemployment picking up in the US, and planning from the administration on how that could impact organizations. So these are some critical things that clients are addressing and trying to manage through this process, through scenario planning, understanding where workers, and share some of the things that into the specifics as we go along on what they're focusing on. Thanks, John.
Great insight. Vic, if you could build on that, how are your clients using AI to adjust their strategies and perhaps manage risk when it comes to this global trade environment challenges that we're all facing?
Great. Thank you, John. So when you think about AI can help you do three things. I call them the three A's. It can help you assist you, it can augment you in terms of being able to supercharge your capabilities, or it can automate processes. And what we're seeing with trade policy is that all of these things can be applied to it. So if you think about like assistance, the new updates in trade policies, which countries are, at which trade levels, all those different types of things can be incorporated into some type of chatbot with the latest policies and procedures. So as policies and procedures change to allow for changes in trade policy, the latest is stored there and people can query it with natural language. So whoever is executing a process always has access to the latest information and can get it very easily, regardless of whatever language it is or wherever they might be located. So that's kind of like what we're seeing assistance being used for. The second is augmentation, where you can supercharge a person's ability to read a massive amount of data. And what we're seeing there is actually a product that we have where we're using AI to be able to ingest POs, bills of lading, contracts, run them through generative AI, read all of those types of things, and extract the country of origin so that we can then develop a potential exposure that this company, that our client may have to tariffs. All right, so whether the originating country is there or if there's a specific material that may have different levels of tariffs that are applied to it. So that's how augmentation can be applied to the trade policy. And the last is automation. And I'll give you an example here with the elimination of the de minimis exception. It used to be that any shipment less than $800 was not taxed or was not tariffed. And there are about 1.4 billion of those last year. Now, all of a sudden, those are going to have tariffs, and the tariffs amounts are going to be about like $20. So now we need to be able to go and collect those tariffs at a very, very low cost because the tariff itself is so low. So we're looking at autonomous agents to be able to make those collection calls with natural language and do that autonomously. So that gives you an idea about how AI is being deployed in different ways to assist with trade policy changes.
Strong observation, gentlemen. Very good. Those effectively will frame our discussion today on how to navigate these challenging times. Now let's bring in our audience into the conversation and start with our first poll question. This will give us a sense of how they see these challenges and help guide our discussion throughout the balance of today's call. Our first question is, what impacts have trade policy had on your finance organization? Please use the polling feature to share your options that best represent your opinions, and you can select more than one answer if appropriate. We'll give you a moment or two to do that, and then we'll share and discuss the results. Great. Thank you for your participation on that. Okay, now let's take a look at the results. Gentlemen, based on that response, how does this align with your field observations? Vic, let's start with you.
So I think this aligns with what I'm saying. So the forecast planning and accuracy, and I think Vin's got a lot of great perspectives on this. We're going to be challenged in terms of how to forecast in this kind of age because the environment is volatile. And I'll let Vin give you a little bit more insight on that because he's been doing a lot of work on it. The other area with like supply chain resiliency and sourcing decisions is also a lot that we're seeing with clients. And one of the things that we're seeing there is that they want to optimize the overall cost of their materials that they are bringing in, and perhaps taking a look at alternate suppliers or working with their suppliers to move those types of things. And where we're seeing AI being applied to that is in areas like autonomous sourcing, which I'm sure we can delve into a little bit later.
Vin, how about you?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit interesting, and I'll go into the interesting aspect of it shortly, John. But on the forecasting itself, we are seeing a lot of clients understanding and forecasting what the exposure is, understanding where they are buying from, and that's probably what they're buying from is there in the contract. But where is it being shipped from? Is there in the POs or sitting in the goods receipt documentation that they need to go and understand what the exposure for each category is by source of origin to do it. So that's a lot, and it's not surprising that FP&A is being impacted significantly. What is surprising, and we have not yet seen, and this is something great for the audience to be aware of, is it's going to significantly impact cost accounting. We need to understand that which widget got charged the tariff and how that's going to be applied in the profitability analysis of that particular product. Because you may buy 100 widgets, but all 100 widgets may not get the tariff because 50 comes from one location, 40 comes from second, and maybe 10 comes from location number 3. And location number 3 has the highest tariff for that. So we need to know where those 10 widgets, which products did it actually go into to understand what the cost is for that product. And are you going to pass it on to your customer, or are you going to retain that cost? Those are going to be a huge uplift on the work on both on the transactional effort that we need to process that. And then we need to apply that to the particular cost center, particular product that we have to apply it to. So you'll know the true cost of profitability of that particular product. So that we are expecting more and more work to pick up. And as you go into your next fiscal year, you're going to see that come through. So just be prepared for that. Thanks, John.
Yeah, thank you. Lots to think about there. Let's dive into the topic that is probably top of mind to many. And as you just mentioned, Vin, tariffs. So, Vin, we're going to come back to you. How do you see tariffs impacting these strategies across specifically finance, procurement, and supply chain?
Got it. The way to think about it is, one is exposure, right? You need to understand by category, by country of origin and services, what is the exposure of to your tariff. And I think most enterprises are already doing a good job there to do it. Some interesting things I think Vic was mentioning was on how you're using AI to help you understand the exposure. Second, what we need to be looking at is scenario planning. Okay, what happens if we move some products to a different plant? What happens if certain amount of, what's the threshold tariff level after which we need to get a substitute in a particular country or from a particular country to do that? So that scenario planning needs to happen on the product side. The scenario planning also needs to start happening on the services side. We are expecting services to also get impacted by the tariffs to come. We've already seen some of the acts which are there in the Congress, which are being discussed. That is going to significantly impact services, but also from a trade and tariff perspective on services, we expect that to start picking up in Q4, Q1 of next year as the white collar unemployment number starts increasing. So there we need to really start looking at, okay, where do we support from? Today we have global operations. Are they all supporting US? Are they supporting Europe or Asia or South America? How do we allocate the effort so that we understand when the tariffs do apply, we are able to calculate what that is. So that scenario planning is going to be critical. Location evaluation is going to be, again, another thing with the geopolitical risks coming in, with the bad trade disruptions coming in. What is our strategy for our locations? Do we continue to expand in a particular location? Do we need to look at nearshore operations? We need to look at from a geopolitical risk perspective. So a lot of clients are looking at evaluating the location footprint from where they provide services. Also, interestingly, the whole sourcing decision is also being revisited. And you've got some contradictory pressures coming in, right? So there is pressure on the CEOs looking at revenue per FTEs. We understand from the administration, there's going to be pressure to bring some of the jobs onshore. We also understand that from an offshoring perspective. There's going to be pressure for companies as they bring onshore to bring the GCCs that they've established in Manila or India or Costa Rica. There's going to be pressure to bring some of that. Should they bring it back? Should they outsource it? Should they monetize some of their centers they've got? The continuation increase of the cost of capital is also putting that pressure. So these are all competing pressures that the companies have to look at. And GBS was really never did this kind of dynamic scenario planning and more real-time planning previously. And this year they've started doing that. We've seen a lot of our clients bring that decision-making planning earlier on. Usually it'd be late Q3, Q4 is when we see it. Now already from all the summer, we've been working with clients to help them plan for next fiscal year on their annual operating plans. Thanks, John.
Vic, you heard Vin mention their GBS, Global Business Services. So when you use that as a backdrop, how are your clients adjusting their sourcing and procurement strategies?
Great, thank you, John. So when you think about procurement and sourcing, there are two types of things that you source, right? One is materials, and because that's been impacted by tariffs first, our clients are much more advanced in moving in that direction on being able to mitigate the risk there. And the other is like people and services, because that is just coming up right now with the new legislation and the things that were just announced, like 100% tariff on any movies produced outside of Hollywood. That is going to take a little bit of time to start to work through the system. And so let me take each one of these kind of individually. So if we talk about materials, the key thing that our clients are looking for are two things. Number one, let's optimize the overall cost of that material or that good, right? So number one, is this a very specific material or good that I need? And can I work with a supplier to bring it in from a factory or a location that is more trade conducive, right? Japan and South Korea have negotiated 15% tariffs. Mexico's still at like a 35% tariff. So, rather than bringing it in from Mexico, can I bring it in from one of those other countries? The other thing is that if it's more of a generic item, what we're seeing clients do is taking a look at how they should source it from alternate suppliers to add resiliency. And what we're actually seeing is the use of autonomous sourcing. So, we've been helping clients be able to use AI to be able to generate the RFX, the RFI, the RFP, send it out there to the selected suppliers, get the responses, be able to compare it with market rates, and to be able to do that largely automatically, autonomously using artificial intelligence. And what it's allowing our sourcing and procurement partners to do is to be able to handle a lot more volume of those types of sourcing activities than they would have been able to do in a typical environment. Because as we've mentioned, there's a lot more activity kind of going on. So that's where I'm seeing our clients go from a material side. Now, from a services side, as I mentioned, this is a lot more that's in the work in the current administration. And what I'm seeing clients do a lot more of is what Vin is saying, is looking at what's coming down the pike in the news and starting to plan and evaluate. If H-1B visas become very expensive, should they put people onshore in the United States? Should they have more of a presence that they have in other types of places? Should they offshore more stuff to places that may have better trade relations with the United States to those locations? So right now it's a lot more trying to understand the situation as it unfolds and plan for various types of scenarios.
Very good. As a reminder, folks in the audience, if you have questions, because we are moving pretty quickly through this material, use the Q&A box to submit those and we'll respond at the end of the session. Now I'd like to pivot and explore how AI can help. Vin, specifically, how are companies, based on your studies, using Gen AI to boost agility and resilience?
So the way they're looking at it, John, is kind of looking at work in three buckets. Structured work. This is work that I know what tomorrow looks like. This is my input. I have a standard operating procedure. I process that input. I can do it fast, error-free. I have an understanding of what my outcome is going to be. So that's what we call structured work. So the way they look at it is look at their work, break it in structured, unstructured work, that is work that really don't know what tomorrow looks like. You're either fighting a fire, there's a new request, something breaks that you need to fix. It's more project based. And then there's interactive work where we're doing kind of contact center, service desk type of thing. So they look at these three, I work into these three buckets. The biggest impact we are seeing today, or use cases which are providing them value, is all in the interactive work. It's in the call centers, in the service desk. They have the self-service chatbots, which we had before, which were very prescriptive. And now, because of the Gen AI capability, they have become much more flexible, realistic, that you can interact. And so they're seeing a big usage of that from a self-service perspective. Call centers, there's huge productivity gains that companies are seeing. That's where we are seeing big use cases getting significant money, value out of it. In the unstructured work, we are seeing more and more using the co-pilots of the day. It's assisting what you do. It's not significantly replacing effort, but what it does is, it makes your work much more effective, maybe a more efficient. It's providing and assisting you with your work you do. That's kind of where we are seeing work and how Gen AI is being used. And I think a couple of slides later, we'll share some of the examples that we have seen with clients.
Really well put. Really well put, Vin. Thank you. Vic, what AI developments is Conduent pursuing? Meaning, how are clients using these to make smarter decisions?
Yeah, so if I take Vin's framework of structured, unstructured, and interactive, right? So when you have interactive work, this is really where you need assistance, right? You need AI to help you out, point you to the right source of knowledge, give you some parameters to kind of work with. And so Conduent has made significant investments in that type of products to help there. So from an overall Conduent perspective, we've introduced Connie, who is a chatbot. It is primarily being used in our HCS organization, which HCS is Human Capital Services or Human Resources. And that is being positioned primarily to help employees be able to navigate the things that they need from HR. Like, hey, how much more vacation do I have? And be able to use something that is easy to get to, be able to speak to in a natural language. Now, we want to be able to take Connie from a finance, accounting, and procurement perspective and be able to apply it to processes where there needs to be interaction with users or with clients, right? So for users, I've hired somebody to take on this process. They need to be able to quickly come up to speed and be able to ask quick questions to make sure that they're executing a process correctly. Or it might be a client who's an internal employee saying, hey, where is the status of this AP bill that I had submitted, or my travel and expense? So that's how we're seeing some of this interactive work type trying to be played out. When you think about unstructured work, these are more project oriented, and this is where you start to see augmentation come in. And as I had given the example before, for a trade policy, we're able to take documents, ingest huge amounts of documents, and be able to query them for what we need. So one of the areas that we use that is within our FastCap for contract analytics, where we take contracts, we read them, extract all the relevant information like the terms, the prices, all of those types of things, and then run that against an AP file to make sure that we are being billed, or our clients are being billed for what they had been contracted. And if there's any discrepancy, that we're able to go recover that on their behalf. So that's an augmentation play. And then if you think about the structured work, that's where you see automation. That's where you see automation coming in, and where AI is really making a big difference, and we'll talk about agentic AI, is that the traditional automation was very rote and it did not deal well with exceptions. What we're seeing now with being able to bring artificial intelligence in is that it's able to learn from the exceptions and be able to continue to improve the process and automation, and thereby decrease the number of exceptions over time and increase throughput. And we're using it for very simple things like being able to take documents that come in, read them in like 30 different formats, different languages, some handwritten, extract the information, and be able to prepare it for input into a different system. But that gives you an idea about where we're investing across the structured, unstructured, and interactive areas that Vin had spoken about.
Yeah, let's go a little bit further. Everybody's hearing about agentic AI. Vin, can you explain what it is and kind of ground us on what the benefits are and how those benefits are balanced with the need for human oversight as well as risk management?
Sure, John. So, as we, introduce the concept of structured, unstructured interactive work, agentic AI is really focused on the structured work. And the easiest way to look at it is kind of AI-enabled hyper-automation. So you've got AI driving automation. And when we say hyper-automation, it means using kind of automation tools, process mining, workflow tools, data capture or intelligent data capture tools. So using all of them, and that's being driven by a Gen AI solution or a model. That's kind of what we get to is agentic AI. By definition, it is a system. It is not an agent. Agentic AI is not one agent or autonomous agent. It is actually a system or a micro app designed to get an outcome. And it gets the outcome by using a set of agents to do it. So it's got either autonomous agents and or assisted agents working together to design to achieve an outcome at a sub-process level. You don't look at agentic AI from an end-to-end process. You look at it at a sub-process. It's not a task level, but it's a sub-process level, which involves a couple of tasks in that process. So that is how to look at it. Fundamentally, it's got three capabilities. One, it has the ability to reason. That's what is driven by the Gen AI foundation models that understands the domain, and it helps you to reason, not just purely deterministic, but probabilistic decision and reasoning it's able to do. Second, it's got an agentic AI has got a set of agents, which could be autonomous. That means they are designed to execute the task from start to finish. If there are exceptions, it'll throw out for a human to get involved, but otherwise it's designed. That's what we call an autonomous agent. And or it's got assisted agents where it's designed for a human to be in the loop to finish that process 1 to 10. And the human is designed to be in the loop itself to do that process. So that's a second capability, that it's got a set of agents, be it autonomous or assisted agents, to do it. The third capability an agentic AI solution has is ability to orchestrate these agents. When it looks at a particular transaction, it knows it needs to use agent number 5 or agent number 7, agent number 8. That's the way it's going to sequence to execute that particular transaction. Another transaction, it sequences very differently. So it's able to orchestrate of which agent runs when to finish that processing, that sub-process of that transaction. So those are the three capabilities of an agentic AI solution: reasoning, a set of agents, and orchestration. And as I said, the use case predominantly where you have got structured work, so it's quite well defined what that sub-process is. It's got some level of fuzzy logic decision making that you need that's where the Gen AI's reasoning model comes. And it's automating a set of tasks or a sub-process, not just one task or not one end-to-end process. So that's the way we define agentic AI.
Very good. Thank you. Vic, before we dive into use cases, I'd like to understand how the leading organizations that you work with, how are they integrating and embedding this intelligence to stay ahead of disruption?
Great question, John. So there's an old saying, the more things change, the more things stay the same, right? So I think when you step back and take a look here, what you want to make sure that you do with where you are embedding artificial intelligence is that you aren't taking a bad process and applying AI to it, right? And this is something that's been existing for the last 30 years, right? 30 years ago, we used to call it re-engineering. Then we called it design thinking. Then we called it, Lean Six Sigma, all those types of things. But that's the fundamental thing is before you just go apply AI, let's take a look at the process. What's the outcome that is being desired? And then what are the simple changes we need to make around that? And then where do we want to introduce AI to improve that process or that operation? And then you have to think about with AI, there's some unusual nuances that you don't see in typical automation in the past. Number one, you want to take a look at what's the role that you want AI to play, right? So is AI being an assistive agent, right? So is it just helping you? Is it serving up suggestions and the human is still doing the work, but it's being assisted? Or is it going to be more autonomous? It can actually go and do the work on your behalf, execute it, but then there needs to be a human who is overseeing it and making sure that the AI is not doing anything that it shouldn't be doing. Or if there are exceptions, the human can explain to the AI, this is what you need to be able to do in the future, the next time an exception comes up like this. Then I think beyond that, you also have to look at your privacy and your privacy is going to, and your data is going to be foundational. So ideally, clients have their own private AI LLM models, right, that they're building from, so that the information that you are sharing is not being shared with like a broader with the broader universe, like running it through the Google Gemini or Chat GPT. And then what you want to be able to do is that as you're working through it, that you want to make sure that the AI has the right temperament. So if it's writing dunning letters, for example, that it's writing it in such a way that it's consistent with your brand and consistent with the level of lateness that the invoice might have. So there's a bit more work that needs to go in there. Those are some of the nuances with AI. But again, I kind of take it back to don't just ingest AI into a broken process. Rethink the process first and then strategically apply AI.
Yeah, that's really well put. I'm going to stay with you on this one because I'd like the audience to hear more along the lines of this autonomous actions that you mentioned, meaning how are organizations starting to use agentic AI within the segments that you serve, namely finance, supply chain, or procurement?
Sure. I'll give you a very simple example, and I'll take it back to some of the trade policy things that we had discussed. So I had given an example very early on about de minimis exceptions, right? So these are the packages that show up that are less than $800, and there is no tariff on them. So in the big beautiful bill, that de minimis exception was eliminated. The average declared value of a parcel coming in under de minimis exception was about $130. And if you have a 15% tariff rate, that now is up to the shipping agency or the shipper to collect that tariff. Now, if you're a shipping agency, you don't necessarily want the driver trying to collect the tariff as they go along their routes, because it messes up the efficiency of the route, and it also, you don't necessarily want them handling money and those types of things. So it fundamentally changes the flavor. So what we're working with some clients on is how can they collect those very small amounts in a very efficient manner. So some of the things that we've come up with is using artificial intelligence for analytics to be able to build a risk profile for the various types of packages that are going under de minimis exception, right? So if it's a very small declared value, very small package, we are going to take a very highly automated approach to collecting it. Whereas if it's got a higher declared value and a higher tariff, we're going to take a more aggressive approach to addressing it, and that might include having human labor. But for the stuff that is the lower tariff, what we are looking at is deploying an autonomous agent to be able to do the collection. So it has in the system that I've got a $20 tariff that I need to collect. Here is the person's address and email. I will send a dunning email to them. and go and generate that first. And then I'm going to follow it up with an automated call. But it's not going to be one of those automated calls where it's like a robotic voice. This comes in as a very natural language voice. It can speak practically any language. So you can start off in English, and if in the middle you want to switch to Spanish, it'll switch to Spanish. And it will basically say, hey, you've got this $20 tariff that needs to be paid. Can we connect you to our online portal to pay it? Are there any issues that you have? When will you be able to pay this? And it will record it, extract out the relevant information if there's any promise to pay, or be able to take the instructions and connect them to a human agent or connect them to an actual portal. The idea is that this is a much lower cost. And given that there are 1.4 billion of these de minimis packages that were sent, we're going to be able to scale it much faster than we would be able to do it with manual contact center agents that might be deployed otherwise. So I hope, John, that gives you an example of how it might be employed.
Yeah, very well put. Very well put, Vic. Thank you. Vin, when we think about practical use cases, have you witnessed any surprises or unique ways in which companies are injecting this type of intelligence in their operations?
I think I've got a case where one of our clients, it's a large European-based, Europe-headquartered automotive provider, automotive parts provider, and they get about 2,000 contacts from their vendors on a daily basis, asking regarding mainly due to your payment of the invoice. To do it, 80% of those 2,000 outreaches are all around dunning. The client has not paid the vendor, and the vendor is sending a dunning letter to a request to this automotive manufacturer. They have 40 ERPs. So it used to take. They had a group of about 50 FTEs who were sitting and triaging this inbox. They would take the request, go into these 40 ERPs, collect all the information, put it together, and respond. It takes about 12 minutes to do it, but because of the backlog, it usually takes about a week to 2 weeks to get back to that vendor. Now they put in an agentic AI solution where there are scripts that are looking at this inbox, extracting the information, classifying the information to realize, is it a dunning? Is it some other request they have? Then going into across the ERP systems, collecting all the information, creating an email response and sending it to a client, sending it back to the vendor. And they were able to do this in 2 minutes. And so vendors, when they send a dunning letter, immediately would get, in the same day, they would get a response back of what the situation is. And vendors suddenly realize, hey, it took us 30 days, 90 days that we were following up, nothing happened. As soon as we send you this dunning email, within the same day, you're getting us all the information to how do we on the status of that invoice to do it. So in fact, it was so vendors started sending more often the dunning letters because they wanted to get the response. So the client had to slow it down and say, okay, hey, process it, but schedule the email to be sent back to the vendor after 2 days so they could control the flow of it, and they didn't want the vendors to abuse it. But they were able to get significant savings. So they could immediately realize about 25 FTE worth of savings. They want to get to further bring that team size down to 10 FTEs from 50 that they originally had by end of next year. So as the efficiency, the confidence of this system or the solution improves, they want to bring it down to almost 10 FTEs and get about 80% savings on that process itself. So you're seeing companies use that and how to do it. I have another client on the reverse side where customers are sending disputes to do it. It comes in, there's a constant email going back from the customer service desk and the customer, and now they're able to use an agent to read that email, extract the information of the customer, the product, what the problem is. Is it because wrong product, wrong price, short delivery, a payment term was incorrect product? Take that, and then create tickets they use Salesforce service. They create a ticket in that and route it to the appropriate team. If it's incorrect payment terms, it goes to the billing. If it's pricing, it goes to the account team. If it's part shipment, it goes to the logistic team. So it's able to create these service tickets and service in Salesforce and send it to the appropriate team to act on it. And all of that is done, again, that reducing that service desk that they need to do that. So here you could see how clients are thinking about how you could use this. Thanks.
Very, very, very good summary there, and a great examples of results. We were going to move on and talk results, but I do want to move on and talk about very specific results, and that's coming your way, Vic. How are organizations using AI to uncover new opportunities for growth or a competitive advantage?
Great question, John. So I take this back to the .com era, right? And AI is one of those same disruptive level of technologies like the internet was. And what you see is, for the greatest disruption, what you want to be able to do is, like in the .com era, use the web into your product, and then also how you can deploy the latest technology innovation, in that case, the web, in your cost structure so that you become unassailable to your competition. And so if you go back to the .com era, Amazon is like an example of this, right? They brought out the first web store. They innovated with the web interface and how people can just rapidly purchase things. And then because they had no brick and mortar locations, they had a significantly different cost structure and a very low cost to scale. And now that's what you're also starting to see with AI. I think what you're going to see, two things. One is AI being introduced into how the product or service might be differentiated from others. And then how AI can be incorporated into the actual operations of the company to ultimately alter the cost structure. And the example that I like to give is more in financial services right now, but there's a company out there called Upstart. And what they do is they give consumer loans. Now, rather than just relying on a FICO score and say, this is your interest rate, they take the FICO score and then they use artificial intelligence and gather up a whole bunch of other data, whether you've applied for it or from other sources, and come up with what is a more realistic credit rating for you, and then give the price of the loan accordingly. So if you had a FICO score that might have given you 10% from your local financial institution, they might have looked at you using their artificial intelligence with all the additional data and said, really, your interest rate should be more like 7%. And that's how they're fundamentally differentiating their product. And then because it's so highly based upon artificial intelligence, their cost structure is significantly different than other financial institutions because they have much fewer people in the background. They're relying a lot more being AI first with agents. So that's how they're building growth and competitive advantage. And that's just an example. So if you can hit them on innovating on the product and in the operations, you become unassailable. To take this and stretch it out a little bit more, what I'm most interested in is how AI is going to create the first one-person unicorn. A unicorn is a company that's valued at $1 billion. And given how AI has been coming out, I wouldn't be surprised if within the next few years, there is a solopreneur who comes up with an AI-based company that gets valued at $1 billion. And already there are incubators out there that are trying to work with these solopreneurs using AI to get them launched. So, John, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. Great setup there. Because Vin, I'm coming back to you now. With our audience in mind, let's take a look at some key considerations for this type of transformation. Meaning, how can organizations, in your opinion, how can organizations prioritize which areas or opportunities to pursue first in a rapidly changing environment?
Yeah, I think two things. Have that structured, unstructured, and interaction work lens. I think it's really helpful to understand which use cases you want to go after. There is a lot of use cases on interaction work, right? That's the service desk work that I was sharing with the automotive and with another manufacturer in the US. There is a lot. Typically, you have a lot of people doing that work, and you want it to have, and it's not extremely deterministic, so it's not rule-based, so you need to have this probabilistic, really good use cases. So look at that work, because that's a good chunk of work that you can address through AI to get the solution. Unstructured work is what you're trying to make sure your company evolves into becoming an AI-enabled organization. You want to be thinking and using AI to assist you in performing your job. So there's a lot of us as using, as being a service provider, we are beginning to use and consume in our own operations a lot of AI to help us deliver services to a client. So that is to turn your organization to become an AI-enabled. And agentic AI, which works on structured work, is going to be the big provider to deliver the big savings, that the promise that AI has for enterprises. There you look after. But one thing I would use a cautionary tale: go after processes that have at least minimum 20 FTEs doing that work, because immediately you can start seeing some savings. One of the fundamental expectations to have from AI solutions, which is different from the previous type of automation and digital transformation we did, is the value it delivers is an exponential growth. You are not going to get significant value immediately. As the adoption increases, you're going to get significant more value. As you add more and more AI solution, you're going to get this multiplier effect. It's almost like, John, think about it like when you were a kid and you got the Lego bricks, right? You would get a set, which you could get a brick of Legos to build a house, right? All you could do was basically build that structure. But now you get another Lego brick set, which could build a train. And you start doing, now you've got more Lego bricks, you can build other structures with it. So it's exponentially starts delivering value. And that is some expectation we are advising clients to set. Don't expect, I put in a Gen AI solution, I immediately see. But if you have at least 20 FTEs doing that work, you can see some immediate savings, but it'll continue to grow as you start adopting more and more. The model learns, the confidence increases. You need less humans in the loop to process that. So that's kind of how to set, I would say, set the expectations.
Very good. Vin, I'm a little offended that you wouldn't think I'd have the talent to build a train, but we could talk about that more later. Vic, I'm coming back to you now and talking about impact of AI. Where are you seeing the most immediate tangible outcomes in the projects that you're affiliated with?
So I think what you're going to see it across augmentation and automation, right? And I think as Vin had mentioned, if you've got a function that's got 20 to 30 FTE and is largely can be understood with some basic rules and exceptions, that is an area that's ripe. And that's where we are looking at applying a lot of our agentic AI is in those types of areas. So, you need to have an effective scale to be able to go do that. I think the other big area is going to be in efficiency gains by individual users. And this goes back to, as Vin mentioned, it becomes an exponential effect, right? As people become used to being able to use AI to look at large data sets and be able to help look for understanding and be able to do things like forecasting multiple scenarios in a much faster manner, you're going to get great efficiency gains and insight. But that type of stuff takes a little bit longer to get to because people have to become kind of used to what AI is able to do, get used to being able to work with it as kind of your world's smartest intern, and then start to collaborate with AI and others to be able to really drive some of that efficiency gain.
Great, valuable input. Now let's bring our audience back into the conversation and move into our second poll question. The question is, which area of your organization stands to gain the most from an AI project in the next 12 to 18 months? Again, please take a moment to select the best options that reflect your opinion, and you can certainly choose more than one answer if applicable. I'll give you a minute to do that. Vin, as these are coming in, what stands out to you on this poll question?
I think it's I think it's interesting to see that this automation routine task is becoming critical. I mean, we all went through the whole RPA expectations, and now we are coming back to that with AI enabled. So I do think I'm pleasantly surprised and happy to see that clients are looking at that, or your audience is looking at that. It's important also to start looking at, hey, because of the trade policy, the tariff management, we are going to get more work coming into our operations, even if our volumes remain same or revenues remain same. We've got to start looking and leveraging AI solutions to help us there to do it. It is really good for all this unstructured data, looking at the contracts, looking at POs, looking at customer orders, looking at emails, converting that unstructured data to structured data on which you can automate. That is going to be a huge part. And looking at that's great. Anomaly detection, issue identification, that is a great expectation. We see that come slightly later within finance and procurement, and even predictive analytics. We'll see that come in probably a little later in 2026. But automation of routine tasks, managing and leveraging it for the tariff policy and impacts of that is going to be something which we're going to see in as we go into 2026.
Vic, which one of these aligns with the majority of the clients that you work with?
I think all of them align to a certain extent. The automation of the routine tasks, the big advantage to that one is that there's more technology that's come in that's more deployable for it already, right? So there's some of the RPA vendors have added AI capabilities for agentic AI, and there are startups who have come in. So I'm seeing more of that type of thing with our clients. I think in terms of predictive analytics and forecasting, there has to be more, for lack of a better term, plumbing work that needs to be done to be able to provide the appropriate data to enable that. But that is something that people are very, very interested in seeing happen over time.
Great, thank you both. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground so far, but before we take the audience questions and wrap up, let's summarize. I'd like to turn back to our experts because these guys know it inside and out. Let's summarize the key points that you've both made. So, gentlemen, what is the single most important insight or takeaway you'd like our audience to remember from today? Vin, let's start with you.
Well, a couple of things. One is act now. You're not going to get all the information. You're not going to get all the solutions developed and then start doing it, and you're going to be too late. So you act now, implement and adapt and adopt, and you go through that. That's the first way to look at it. Second is, don't look at Gen AI as you're going to be training it, you're going to be tuning it to support you are going to use the foundational model as is and build solutions around it that you're going to leverage and do it. So don't get into, hey, I need all the data to train my models. You're not going to get, especially in the SG&A world of sales, finance, HR, supply chain, procurement, customer service. We're not going to be doing significant training there. We are going to take these foundation models, augment it with some knowledge context solutions, and build solutions around it and leverage it. So those two are big takeaways that I would recommend, John.
Vic, same question to you.
Sure, I'll just give two quick takeaways. Number one, we're in a volatile environment, right? Every day there's a new announcement of what's going on in trade policy from the United States and from other countries as they kind of work through it, right? So one of the things that we have to be prepared for is that this is not like a one and done type of situation. We need to be thinking about how can we make ourselves resilient to trade policy changes over at least the next several years. So what processes can we put in place and what technologies do we need to be able to accelerate that? And then kind of related to that is artificial intelligence can help reduce the amount of work that's going to be thrown at various organizations resulting from trade policy. Whether it's to assist the employees, augment their capabilities, or help automate processes, it's worth taking a look to see how AI can help in that.
Excellent takeaways from two gentlemen that have a combined 80, almost 40 years. Sorry, I didn't want to age you guys. 40 plus years experience in the industry. So we hope these have sparked your interest in learning more on how AI can empower a smarter finance, procurement, and supply chain strategy for you. Now let's pivot and get to our questions. Let's see here. Vin, I'm coming your way. Nick asks, how do you suggest building a new process that includes AI in its framework when the capabilities of AI are improving so rapidly?
It's a great question, Nick, and you're right. The capability of AI is going to continue to evolve. One of the things we look at when we look at a process, we are trying to come up with a digital index. What's the maximum capability of all these tasks can get automated? And that is constantly getting pushed by new capabilities coming with AI. And you're not going to have this completely solved before you implement. So you're going to implement a solution. And so it's extremely important when you're implementing solutions that these are modulars. So if you think there's a new foundation model, the Chat GPT 5.0 is much better than the 3.5 you're using. When you build solutions, they need to be modular enough to take the model off and upgrade it to another model. That's why I don't want you to think about we have to train, because if you're training the model, then you can't make it modular. So we've got to build solutions where we can replace modules, we can add additional modules to build better solutions as its capabilities improve. So think about building modular solutions with AI that you can replace and with or augment with additional solutions and capabilities as they come along.
Very good recommendation there. Vic Ranjith asks, up to what end can we use Copilot? For example, can we upload the vendor invoices and extract forms or data out of Copilot? And is it recommended?
So great question. It has that capability, but I wouldn't really recommend it. And here's a few reasons why. So number one, Copilot is Microsoft's AI. The Copilot you have may or may not be public, right? So there's a lot of Copilot out there that is actually public. And I don't know if you want to upload your contracts and invoices or POs and have it available to the public and have the system learn from it. So there's a privacy and security issue that you need to look at. The second thing is that Copilot is just a generic chatbot, LLM, large language model, and it's not tuned to being able to extract that type of information. So if you take like your POs or you take your contracts or you take your invoices and you upload them, you first of all have to do it like one by one. And there's limitations on what happens in kind of the public Copilots. You may get 10, 20, and then the system will start to choke. You may run into things like hallucinations where it gets confused and it's going to give you bad information. And then on top of that, it may or may not be able to understand the context of exactly what you want and pull the right information. So when I compare it to like what we've done with FastCap, we've built a private cloud environment for it. We've spent a lot of time being able to tune the environment to load batch. So we can load 200, 300, 400 documents, no problem, without the system running into any issues. We've spent a lot of effort on data engineering and prompt engineering to be able to do a number of things: eliminate duplicates, avoid hallucination, and being able to make sure that it understands exactly what are the types of things it's looking for in those documents to be able to extract it the first time, and then also be able to extract it in a way that it's useful for the end user.
Very good. Vin, last question here. How can leaders, Bill asks, how can leaders build trust in AI-driven recommendations?
Yeah, I think one is AI. When you're trying to build trust, first you're using AI at an enterprise level. As Vika said, it's really, really critical that we are not using public domain. You're using enterprise domain to do that. Second is you typically, when you're building your AI solution, you put in and design a confidence level. So first you're saying, okay, unless you're 100% confidence, do not execute this, right? Send it to a human to get involved. As you see that and as you trust that and you see the performance of that, then you start dialing that confidence level down and saying, okay, if you're 95% confident, go ahead and process it. And then you don't turn it down to 90% confidence and you can do it. And that's kind of how you build trust in your processing of it. When you're unstructured, it provides the information that human is designed to be in the loop. You're taking that and then you're going to evaluate what is given and how you want to use it. So that is not going to change much when you're doing it in an unstructured. But in your structured work, you can set the confidence and you build it. And also, we've got to be careful, right? How do you know when you have humans and are you confident in what the human is doing too? We inherently are more comfortable with humans, even if they make mistakes, than a machine that makes mistakes, right? So and that is going to be, as we become more and more comfortable in having an AI solutions along with us to work, we become more and more confident in the solution, right? To do that. And that's kind of how it goes. It's like how we all adopted GPS. Now we just, blindly follow whatever the GPS is telling us to turn left or right when we're driving, right? To do it. Before, we would always know where we're going and then still use the GPS. And now we just put in their phone, the address, and we just follow whatever direction it's giving. So that is a adoption and become more and more familiar with it.
Great advice backed up by a great example. Once again, I want to thank our panelists for being here today, and thank you, our audience, for participating in our webcast. We hope you found the content from today's discussion insightful, and will use it to help guide your own journey. As you can see now on your screen, we've provided you with downloadable resources that represent additional thought leadership to help you continue today's discussion. Soon, you'll also be receiving a follow-up email from us where you'll find a link to replay today's session and an offer to schedule a one-on-one discussion with an expert if you'd like to explore a customized transformation plan for your own organization. So look for that in your inbox. Lastly, on behalf of everybody here at Conduent and the Hackett Group, I want to thank you for your time and attention today. This concludes our program.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Vic.
Thank you, Vin. Thank you, John.
Thank you.